Hello everyone, welcome to SBJ Executive Insights, where we spend some one-on-one time with senior leaders in sports business and get their point of view. I'm Abe Madcore, publisher and executive editor of Sports Business Journal. Today's conversation with Rashid Ghazi, president of Paragon Marketing Group. Rashid, you and I have gone back a long time. Welcome to SBJ's Executive Insight. Got a lot of respect for what you and your agency have built over the years.
We appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
Because you're involved in a lot of things. You're involved in sports partnerships, you're involved in mobile and experiential marketing. But today I really want to focus on, I would say, youth sports and the opportunities around youth sports, youth marketing, because you are really, I would say your agency is a specialist in this area. And you've noted this is an area where we've seen incredible growth and more potential on the horizon.
Absolutely. I mean, the area has been changing when it comes to youth sports marketing in that industry over the past 15 to 20 years. And a lot of changes have taken place over the past 10. And I think today I can kind of highlight 5 main areas of growth that people should know about or areas of interest. And I think the first one to talk about is the specialization of sports. When we were growing up, most kids played 3 sports in high school and were athletes who play a fall, winter, and spring sport. In today's marketplace, we see more and more athletes specializing in sports. So they may play some sports for fun, but they'll specialize in basketball, soccer, tennis, golf, or something else. And what that's kind of led to is this year-round business around those sports on a youth basis. So it's led to an increase in club sports and club teams. It's led to an increase in travel tournaments. It's led to an increase in private training. And off of those kids specializing is an entire business ecosystem that's been built out of their commitment to play, but also their parents' commitment to invest dollars into their kids' athletic careers.
And so a lot of the areas off that are, I would say, content opportunities, and inherently youth sports are tied to all sorts of, I would say, online marketing opportunities, content, publishing. Those lend themselves well to these types of youth tournaments and events, correct?
Absolutely. I think the first thing to look at, the tournament industry and the youth industry lends itself to a lot of traditional businesses, right? The sporting goods industry, the food and nutrition industry, the hospitality, hotel, and travel industry. But over the past 5 to 10 years, really the content and digital media industry has transformed youth sports. And by that, I mean, you've got networks such as the NFHS network for high school sports, Baller TV for high school and club, Flow Television as well. So now if you go to a youth sporting event and it's a travel tournament, most likely than not, it's going to be streamed live on some kind of pay-per-view service. Many who've got thousands, if not millions of subscribers who buy their services because it allows a grandmother and grandfather, a parent who's traveling, friends and family to watch those kids play. And that's really been a game changer in terms of how content is created and delivered. And that also has changed how social media is kind of looking at high school sports and youth sports as well.
We'll get to that, but your point is a great one, Rashid, because those are subscription model services. And we've seen those ones that you mentioned there have had real success over the years. I know there have been some other ones that have been startups that may not have had such scale, but they have recurring revenue because, to your point, very engaged audience of people who will pay for continued access.
Absolutely. And I think there's 2 types of audiences that you're looking at. So we televise for the past 20 years. Paragon televises high school sports on ESPN.
Yep.
And on that service, our focus are top teams in the country, top recruits in the country, top players who are going to go to college or go to the NBA. So we focused on Tim Tebow, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Julio Jones. And that's meant for a national audience, and that's meant for larger scale advertisers who want to be in the know and want to present the next future superstars, right? And for college fans who want to know who's coming to their universities. The digital streaming services do a little bit of that, but they're mainly targeting local sports where the parents and families and friends are interested in watching their kids play.
Yep. And then your point there on the, I would say, the long tail related to social media, because there's a lot of ways this can live in the social sphere.
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of things. You've got networks such as in basketball, the social digital space has exploded. And I think that's come down because basketball is such a part of youth culture. The NBA has really led the way with social media in content creation, not only from the teams and the league itself, but from their athletes. And that ecosystem has spun its way down into high school and youth sports. So you've got digital social networks such as Overtime, Slam High School, Ball is Life, which has 3 million YouTube subscribers and over 4 or 5 million Instagram subscribers. where people are not only fascinated with who's in the NBA and who's in the college level, but high school kids themselves have become stars. So Jalen Green, who was drafted by the Houston Rockets, had over 1 million Instagram followers. We all know the story about Zion Williams and his multi-million Instagram following on social media. Bronny James at Sierra Canyon, who's only a junior, has got over 6 million followers. Mikey Williams may be the most popular high school kid out there right now. He has 3 million Instagram followers and just signed a deal with 2K Sports. So companies are creating social content around youth sports, but then also some of these athletes are creating their own content, becoming their own content creators and developing their own brands via social media as well.
So before we talk about like big events, because I've always been fascinated on that, let's talk about a little bit about if you're a corporation and you want to get into this space and want to monetize this space and want to support this space, like are there certain corporations, better verticals, more suited to the youth sports ecosystem than others, do you think, Rashid?
Well, I think you've seen this for years. Nike, Under Armour, Adidas have all supported the youth sports industry for a long time. They've created events, they've funded events, they have sponsored television teams. Gatorade's been a huge sponsor of youth sports and supported a lot of grassroots events where you've got thousands of kids coming and playing baseball, basketball, football. Dick's Sporting Goods has been a huge sponsor of youth sports as well. So I call those categories kind of the endemics within youth sports.
Yep.
I think for a lot of other brands, they traditionally had looked at youth sports as a localized or a regional play. So when we started televising events nationally 20 years ago, if we called a company, if they say that's a local budget because it's taking place in Chicago, I don't have national dollars for that. I think what's changed is as you have platforms such as ESPN or large social and digital platforms that can reach a national audience, and our world has become more interconnected. So teams across the country will play each other, or larger scale events will take place to draw athletes and communities together. More brands have looked at it on a national level than a local level.
Quick follow on that. So you're saying that, I mean, in your experience, because you've been at this a long time, more and more interest, though, at the corporate level with, like you said, even in the non-endemics that may have national dollars to play in this space.
Absolutely. I think the challenge for any of these companies is if you want to sponsor soccer, let's say, and you're a national brand, where do you head to? You head to MLS. You may look at Premier League advertising through NBC. You'll look at athlete endorsements domestically or internationally. So you know, agencies and companies know where to go. Now, if you say, hey, I want to be involved in youth soccer, for example, how do I do that? And that's where a specialization comes in. There's not a one-stop buy, but what's happened is there are enough large-scale tournaments that exist now. There are enough large-scale soccer clubs that exist now. There's the formulation of MLS Next, which is a whole youth soccer kind of academy entity the MLS has created with soccer clubs, that you can put together your own unwired network of properties and create a national platform. It just requires more work. It requires more contracts, and it requires more diligence on the execution front because it's not going to be as turnkey as your larger college and professional properties, but you can still put together this unwired network of events and categories and people together. So what happened was, 15, 20 years ago, a lot of the event operators were 501c3s on a local basis or regional basis. Over time, there are LLCs and there are venture capital funds that are consolidating the industry. So now one company may own 20 lacrosse events. Another company may own 30 soccer events. Certain clubs in soccer are becoming predominantly strong in regions. So in Illinois, where I'm from, there's 3 soccer clubs that have got a lot of the kids engaged in them. So it becomes easier to put together this unwired network where you could do deals with 7 soccer clubs, 10 events, a couple of property owners, and then activate and execute across that. It does, from an agency perspective and from a client perspective, require more due diligence, require more time and more energy and effort to create that program, but it's much more doable on a large scale today than it was 15, 20 years ago.
You and I have both seen the development of these large youth sports-oriented complexes, Rashid. And so do you see that leading to more and more big events with wider audiences over the next few years?
I think those are 2 separate things. I think that the complexes are there almost as many Disneylands or Disney Worlds for youth sports. So it's about heads in beds. It's about throughput of a lot of athletes coming in. It's about having the facility and the time and the place to put 20 softball games on together, or renting out a facility to hold 40 volleyball events, because the teams and the athletes want to play nationally. They want to play in multi-tiered events. They want to showcase their skills to college coaches, and they want to challenge themselves. So these kinds of facilities are needed because, remember, these are kids. They still have to go to school. They've got homework. They've got other responsibilities. So how do you get the throughput through a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of a large-scale tournament? You need these kinds of complexes to do so. The nice thing for brand marketers are, you don't necessarily have to go do a deal with one club to get athletes. You can go to these complexes, sign partnership deals, and then you get the throughput of numerous sports. I think the nationalization of sports, which is something that we get involved with, is more about at least in football and basketball, it's more about the high-end athlete who's ranked nationally, who's going to be a college star, who's got social media following, and people actually want to see in a live game. When we first started televising high school sports on ESPN, my kind of line was, everyone had heard about that athlete, but no one had seen them play. And that was my line for LeBron, because he was in the cover of Sports Illustrated.
Right.
People were trading clips of him on the internet, but no one had really seen him play. Today, that's changed. When I put an athlete on ESPN, a lot of people have seen them, but they've only seen clips and highlights of them. They haven't seen them play in the context of an entire game on a national level, potentially against another national opponent that they normally wouldn't schedule otherwise. So I think that's the difference between the large scale events that are taking place versus the large scale television properties that are being created.
So as you look at this space, and as we finish up, any headwinds that concern you?
In terms of concerns for where the industry is headed, I think there's, with the advent of so many more events and properties and operators, I think the biggest challenge that brands are going to have is making sure they're aligning with the right partners, making sure they're aligning with the right properties, making sure that their brands are in a safe space. You kind of know what you're getting with NFL, NBA, MLB, major college programs. I think in the youth landscape, it's understanding which properties are premier. So everyone knows that Little League Baseball is a 5-star property. Pop Warner Football is an excellent property. We've got one of our clients titling USA's Hockey Youth National Championships. But then you've also got these academies popping up in the world of high school basketball. You've got event operators that you've got to make sure are legitimate as they're putting their deals together as well. And that part that concerns me is everyone's out to create stuff and to bring things together. And do they have the qualifications, the credentials, and the ability to actually pull these things off, not only on behalf of the kids and the athletes, but also on behalf of the companies they're looking to secure.
Yeah, and I think that almost leads to my last question, is like, there's such an exciting time right now in the sports business space overall, and a lot of them touch on the youth sports business. So I guess I'll end, Rashid, with what other youth sports business topics like do you have your eye on? Because certainly some could argue that NIL is going to play a role here, and some other issues will play a role in the space. What else should people be keeping their eye on?
Yeah, I think NIL is the number one thing to look at. In fact, I was on the phone yesterday in a conference call with 6 of the top high school basketball programs in the country as we're planning television schedules. And I've been asked the NIL question from a lot of those headmasters, because what's happening is if you've got an athlete on your high school roster right now who's already signed with Kentucky or Duke, North Carolina, or UCLA, they are getting calls regarding NIL opportunities. They're getting calls from agents saying, let me represent you and help build your brand. And right now, the marketplace is such as some schools, if they're independent, could do NIL deals. Other states have said you can't do NIL deals. Other state associations have said we're not going to get in the way of NIL deals. The NCAA has told me that high school kids can do NIL deals and it won't affect their eligibility. But then how does that affect if it doesn't affect their eligibility for college, how does it affect their eligibility to play on their high school team? And these are all open-ended questions. The one thing I do know from a lot of athletes is they are concerned about how are they going to build their brand. So some athletes were very focused on brand building and Instagram and Snapchat, right? 5 years ago, 6 years ago. But now when you look at sponsorship deals, one of the ways we evaluate professional athletes for deals is what's their social media following, what's their engagement, what's their ability to reach and connect our brand through their own platforms. Well, the same questions are getting asked of college athletes. So the high school athletes at the elite level are very concerned about how can they build their social following to create more value and visibility for them. So then they're not only are they under consideration for sponsorship deals, but then they can charge the kinds of rates they'd like to see for those sponsorship deals.
So everything you've touched on really are around marketing, around branding, around personal endorsements, around burgeoning sports media. So it's all in this space. Well, great conversation. Thanks so much for joining us, Rashid. We will see you down the road.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
That's our SBJ Executive Insights with Rashid Ghazi, President of Paragon Marketing Group. Again, I'm Abe Madkour. Thanks for joining us.